Hello and welcome to ClearCast. My name is Jeff Allen, and I am joined, as always, by my friend and colleague, Kenon and Jen. Kenon, how are you?
Hey, Jeff. I'm good. I'm doing pretty good.
Fantastic. Glad to hear it.
How are you?
Terrible. Never been worse.
Why am I laughing at that? That's terrible.
I don't know. I knew you would laugh. That's why I said it. I'm actually doing really good. Thanks for asking.
Okay, good. Thanks for helping me not feel bad about myself.
So later on in this episode, we are going to be joined by Jonathan Lawless, who's with a really cool company called Bilt Rewards, and he's their director of homeownership. And he's going to talk to us about some interesting things they're doing. But before we do that, how have you been? It's been a while since we've done an episode, and you did a couple mini-sodes at the ICE conference recently. How have you been? How did those episodes go?
Despite not having my co-host and feeling abandoned, I thought they went surprisingly well. But there was like this twinge in my heart every time I was interviewing folks. It was like something was missing, and yeah. So thank you. Thanks for asking, Jeff.
I'm sorry I hurt your heart, but I'm glad that you got a chance to spread your wings and fly solo. I've always knew you had it in you.
Thank you for spinning that that way. But no, it was great actually to talk to. It's always fun at events to talk to people in person and to kind of hear off the cuff, type feedback on, what they're hearing, what they're seeing, what they're focused on. I realize how much our industry loves to connect in person. Like, we have a lot of extroverts that really enjoy getting together. So it's been good.
Good. And you are the king of all the extroverts. If you ever go to a conference, a mortgage or real estate conference, and you're with Kenon, just be prepared to see that everybody knows him. It's pretty magical.
That's the thing. I'm an introvert, actually. It's true.
Could have fooled me. Well, let's talk about something that's not introverting at all, and that is mortgage rates. They're extroverting up. Did you like that segue?
A little bit, yeah.
Okay. All right. So news for our pod. If you've been living under a rock, then you may not know this, but mortgage rates are currently the highest that they've been since 2009. The average interest rate for a 30-year fixed rate mortgage, conforming loan balances, increased to 5.37% last week. So we're north of 5. And it's been a long time, like I said, since 2009, since that's been the case. So Kenon, what do we make of all this? What does this mean for mortgage volume? What does this mean for affordability? How do we parse this?
Yeah, well, it's definitely affected mortgage volume pretty aggressively. I mean, volume has dropped off, especially, refinances have dropped off, I think, 70% plus, year over year. We're even seeing purchase applications, were down last week, something like 8%. So it appears like it's not just mortgage rates going up, which I think the way that you think about that impacting a borrower in terms of making a mortgage payment is that increases from where we were a year ago. That increases mortgage payments by 46%. So it's real numbers, in terms of what people feel like they can afford. But also, it's not just about rates going up. It's also that home prices have continued to go up. We're still at the close to 20% home price appreciation that's happening while we have record low supply. So that means you're still in this competitive situation. That in terms of your offers, while you have mortgage rates up, and then homes costing more than they did even a year ago. So definitely has an impact on affordability.
Yeah, it's a double whammy. We already had housing prices getting out of reach, especially for first-time home buyers. So now to layer in massive new borrowing costs, that weren't there before, it's definitely going to have an impact. So it's definitely something we're going to be watching very closely. And related to that, we've got a stat of the pod. So for the 5th consecutive months, new pending home sales have decreased. And this is almost certainly in part due to the interest rates going up. So in March, NAR, National Association of Realtors, reported they fell again by 1.2%. So not only you talked a lot about refi volume coming down, that certainly is pretty impactful on the mortgage side, but shifting our focus kind of to the real estate side, purchases, seems like it's having an impact there too. What is that going to do? Declining pending sales. What do you think that's going to do for the market?
Well, I mean, there's less homes available to buy, so I think supply is impacting the amount of new home sales. But also when we think about, you mentioned first-time home buyers, even new homes being built are not really available to first-time home buyers. They're not starter homes, because of the cost of construction and supplies, due to inflation. Those new homes are in the upper tier, and so I think that we definitely have some problems for the industry to solve in terms of supply being built up. That's why did you see that letter from the NAHB? The Home Builders Association wrote a letter to the Biden administration, asking for tariffs to be removed on lumber. And they painted a pretty dire picture as to what they believe is the likelihood of a housing recession if they're not able to build homes at a certain price point. So a lot of massive changes have happened, it feels like, in the past 3 weeks.
Yeah, and it's going to be, I think the rising inflation costs on new construction is exactly coming at the wrong time, because what we really need to get out of this supply demand imbalance we have in housing is more and more new housing, to really add to the inventory. So not a shock, I guess, to see home builders taking that kind of a drastic step, but they really went very public with it. You're right. Calling for the Biden administration very publicly to make some pretty significant changes.
So I guess that's what makes today's guest, I think, really good timing, because there has to be other models and other options that help people get into houses now, and people are getting a lot more creative at some other paths, right, to get into an affordable home, or to make the purchase of a home more affordable, if you will. I saw too that adjustable rate mortgages they've reemerged. I think they've doubled the volume of adjustable rate mortgages. So it's starting to feel a little bit of deja vu here. I don't know.
Returning to our past sins. Okay, so we are joined now by Jonathan Lawless. Jonathan is the director of home ownership with a company called Bilt Rewards. That's a job title I have not actually heard before.
You get creative with the job titles. Like I thought Lord of Homeownership would have been an interesting one, but
that got denied. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
I like it. So Bilt is driving innovation. It lets renters earn points and rewards from paying their rent, which kind of sounds like magic. I didn't even know that was even possible. But Jonathan, thanks for joining us.
Yeah, my pleasure. Thank you guys for having me. Excited to talk with you.
Right on. Well, let's start with, if you don't mind, with a bit of a background on Bilt Rewards. Can you kind of give us the Cliff's Notes of what Bilt does and how it works and what pain points you guys are attacking?
For sure. It is magic. So I will reveal our secret. In the background, there is actually a magician that makes it all happen. And once you hear about it, it sounds too good to be true. Honestly, we're basically a loyalty program for renters. You think you've got a lot of loyalties programs that you're probably members of, Hyatt, Delta, American Airlines or whatnot, but just think of this as a program for renters. And so like any loyalty program, you can earn points by doing the thing, which is paying your rent. And so, that's the easiest way to think about it. And really for us, it was, there's a lot of people who want to become homebuyers. They're just stuck renting. And, my mother-in-law used to tell me that renting is pissing away money, right? So you have these people that feel like I'm loaded with student debt. I can't afford a home. And the biggest payment I'm making, I don't get anything for. And so, we kind of set out to try to figure out what we could do there. And so basically you get your points by paying rents. You can do it in two ways. One, you can be in one of our alliance buildings. So we've signed up with with a bunch of different property managers. We've probably got about 3 million renters in total that are part of that sort of alliance. And they can just sign up for regular membership. We also have, for any renter, you can sign up for the Bilt MasterCard, which you can see right behind me, cool looking card, and use that to pay your rent. You can cut a check to your landlord. It doesn't matter where you are. If you're a renter, you can pay on the Bilt platform and get points. And so you get a few other benefits. We're working on rent reporting, so we've got something coming soon on that. But one of the things, if you're on MasterCard, you get flexibility on when you pay. You don't have to pay on the first. You can charge it on the first. You do have to pay it off in the first billing cycle. But that means you've got 45 days to pay your rent as opposed to having to pay it on the first. So the points, a couple of things to note on that. We're probably one of the best loyalty programs out there. We've hired some amazing people on the team that have put together an amazing loyalty program, airlines, hotels, fitness clubs, all sorts of things that you can get. I mean, we're right up there with Chase Sapphire and Amex in terms of the value of our points. So that's super cool. Another benefit is that our points can actually be used for a down payment, which is pretty unique. But if you look at the Fannie Mae selling guide, and same thing with FHA, they allow loyalty points, reward points to be used towards a down payment. And so, all of those things basically mean your renter, now you're actually getting benefits. You can use those benefits for your next vacation, or you can save them up to use towards your down payment when you get ready to buy, you're building your credit, so on and so forth. I guess the last minor benefit to mention, if you can call it that, is you kind of get me. So on the platform, I'm doing a lot of pieces, getting the word out on how to think about home ownership after having spent 2 decades sort of in the belly of the beast, if you will. I kind of know how it works. And so we're putting out a lot of thought pieces just to help renters think about how to plan for, how to shop, how to get a mortgage, all that type of thing. So that's Bilt.
Yeah, I mean, it does seem like magic. But it's such a simple idea, but applying it to this particular use case is what makes it, I think, super cool. And I want to dive a little bit more into you, right? Because like as you mentioned, like you have this experience, from a lot of different angles, and obviously there's something that you saw that that took you away from your career at Fannie Mae to doing these types of things. So what's driving you, I guess, what gives you kind of passion for some of these things?
Yeah, so spent 2 decades at Fannie Mae, a lot of which I spent in analytics. So learning how to build desktop underwriter models and learning how to price in the GSE. So got to really know the system. But my last 6 years, I switched over to doing affordable housing. I really wanted to kind of take my analytics know-how, my knowledge of the industry, and try to create products to help aspiring home buyers. So Home Ready is an example of a program that I created while I was at Fannie Mae. Now, obviously, a really big program, but worked on a bunch of things. It was awesome. I really enjoyed it. I think the thing that was most frustrating in working at Affordable in the last few years is something that I know you guys are talking about constantly, which is like, there's no homes out there, right? Affordability is getting really hard. And honestly, there's really only one solution, which is more homes. And that's hard to do. And so where I started pivoting my attention was more to focus on access. So one of the consequences of having limited supply, expensive homes, is that only the richest and wealthiest are able to even get access to those homes, and everyone else is sort of left out. And so in a way, I've been looking for ways to kind of start leveling the playing field for others in the market to be able to compete for those same homes. Of course, we can't make it cheaper, but we just give them a shot.
Yeah.
And of course, with Bilt, like this is a way to help build renters, to get them ready, to get them more savings, get them better credit, so that when they go to buy a home, they're not like stuck with a loan that's FHA and they're unable to buy because they're getting outbid by cash buyers, or they can get a legitimate loan and they're ready to do that, and they know how to compete given the sort of information I share. So that's been really compelling to me about Bilt. And I know, I've been talking to folks in the industry, folks at the GSEs, like with rates going up, like repeat borrowers are just going to be gone, right? Like I've got a 2.5% mortgage on this house. Like I'm not moving. Like it'd be so much, not only are home prices up, like I'd have to get a much more expensive loan. It's like really what you're going to be faced with for the next few years is first-time home buyers, and who those first-time home buyers are today are renters. And so I'm really excited. We've got 100,000 members already on our platform. We just launched a few weeks ago. We're getting 1,000 apps a day. This company is going to go crazy, and having that group of people on a platform that are showing interest in housing, we can use points to incentivize behavior. The industry should be on alert, because Bilt's going to be the place where people want to go to sort of think about who's buying homes next.
Wow.
That's really exciting. It's great to hear that you guys are already seeing that kind of reaction, because I think there's a definite need for it. There are so many people, especially younger people, who are, that generation, and I'm not young anymore, but I have the same debt that generation does from college, right? And I know how difficult that can be to manage through. That's a really new thing for this generation of like, we all have crazy student loan debt that we're working through. I think you're tapping into a market of people who are really looking for creative solutions to how they can build their nest eggs up.
Yeah, I totally agree. And, part of what I've been looking at the student debt thing, there's a really neat company that I just throw out for you guys to check out. A friend of mine started, it's called Savvy, S-A-V-I, or Buy Savvy. And so one of the things we've been thinking about at Bilt is how do we focus more on overall financial health and wellness as you're planning for becoming a homeowner. So in the student debt thing, he had this amazing stat, and I won't remember exactly, but of the number of people that have federally insured student loans, like a ridiculous percentage are actually eligible for reductions in their payment. Like either you're a public servant and you can get some forgiveness, or you don't have to pay, or you get your payment reduced. And like a very small fraction of people actually take advantage of it. So what Savvy does, and they're at bysavvy.com, is like you can go tell them your income. It's like a TurboTax thing. You guys know what a pain in the ass student debt is. Like you got 6 servicers, 12 loans. They're all, so it just basically pulls all that information in, fills out your forms, and then you pay them to just submit and file your forms every year. And they'll find every program you're eligible for, so you can reduce your student loan. So anyway, I mean that's kind of an example of like, we just need to help people get a little bit of an edge so that they can start saving a little bit more and then build towards actually becoming a homeowner. Otherwise, you got people with no savings, no credit, and spiraling home prices. You're just going to be, you have a generation of forever renters, basically.
Yeah, I mean, it seems like there's a lot of startups right now, or new models trying to come into the space. And you were just one at another model for trying to provide some shared ownership options with Pathway. Maybe using that as one example, but I mean, are there models that you think really work to give people that shot that you're talking about?
Yeah, I'll talk a little bit about Pathway. It's an amazing organization. Sort of the thought process there is the single family rental market's exploding, right? You've got a lot better technology to manage properties. I mean, you guys work with these every day. They're so good at buying and managing and renting out homes. So the thought for us is, how do you take that efficiency and basically share the value of it with the consumer? And so our first product offerings are not incredibly novel. They're a lot out there, but they're basically lease purchase programs. So you're a renter in the home, but you have an option to buy. And we don't lock that option at 20% home price growth. We lock it at a more modest home price appreciation. So the hope is 3, 4, 5 years later, you can take a call option on the home price and have a lot of equity already built up because the home's appreciated. So I like those models, but they're still very much rental models, and you still need to qualify for a loan, and the home price is going up. So the one that we're really excited to launch, which we're going to be launching in the next couple of months here, is, as you mentioned, a shared ownership program. And the idea for this really came from the UK. So the UK has a very, very robust market of shared ownership. There's a lot of affordability programs around shared ownership. You just look up Help to Buy as a big UK government scheme. If you look Help to Buy shared ownership, you'll see all the sort of details about how it works there. So we wanted to take, I mean, the UK has the same problem we have, right? They've got limited supply, lots of demand. They just have a lot less space. So they've been really struggling with this issue for much longer. So the idea is that this will work really well in the States. And the way it effectively works is we, as a sort of institutional investor, become co-owners with a resident. And so they own half the property and we retain the ownership of the other half. They pay us rent for the part that we own, but they're the only occupant, right? So they're paying a mortgage on the part that they purchase and they're paying rent on the part that they didn't. And so the way like we think about it is, right now you've got rent or you got own, and they're very different, right? Could we create a model that puts you in between? And so, and what we've tried to do is retain the benefits of being a renter. Number one, having maintenance support, which we provide. And the other benefit we wanted to retain is some flexibility. So we offer you at any point in time, if you decide to leave, we'll buy you out at your market value. If you decide that you want to buy us out, we'll sell at market value. So you have the flexibility to go all ownership or just leave like you would as a renter. And then what do people like about owning? Well, they don't like having to fix shit, right? So that's definitely not, I'm sorry, I don't know if this is a PG.
Let it fly, man.
Podcast.
Let it fly.
My apologies. But they do want to have access to that home price appreciation. So you're a true legitimate owner of half the property, and then you get all these sort of flexibilities as a renter. We're a cash buyer at the start. When you pick a home, we buy it with cash. So I kind of look at that as like, wow, like a renter who's able to afford rent can now sort of take part of half ownership, build equity really quickly, right? And then when they're ready, they can either just take that equity somewhere else or buy us out. So that the model has a lot of promise. We're working through some kinks, so it hasn't been brought to market yet. But when it comes, I do think it's going to send some shockwaves through the industry, because it really is more unique than any of these other shared fractionalized models. Like a lot of people are like, oh, we're tokenizing your house. Well, what that means is they're turning a real estate asset into a securitization asset. Like they're all interesting models. They all have different areas that they're trying to serve, but this one really serves everybody, right? It's all first-time homebuyers will have a better first-time experience using a program like this.
You definitely seem to have I think more knowledge of and passion for concepts around like making homeownership more accessible than probably anyone I've ever talked to. This seems like it's almost been sort of like your life's journey and your life's passion. Was there any sort of like single flashbulb moment for you where you thought, yes, this is what I want to focus on?
Honestly, it's a series of things like anything, but I'll say when I ran analytics, I spent a lot of time sort of measuring various affordability programs and things that we were doing. And it was kind of a nightmare. I mean, particularly in the early 2000s, as risk was spiraling out of control. It wasn't sustainable. But I look at things like down payment programs, and you kind of look like since the civil rights era, like we have not improved the home ownership racial gap at all. I mean, the home ownership rate has been flat. And so you kind of look at that and say, well, how many billions of dollars have we spent on down payment assistance or all these other programs, right? Like something we got something wrong, like something's not working. And I'm not saying that those are bad programs, and they all have done some good for some people for sure, but it hasn't moved the needle. And that to me is like, it's just crazy, right? Like we just haven't figured this thing out. There's a problem here. And so that sort of thing is really compelling to me. I also just, as another fact, like, my parents, I'm a CODA, which is an acronym people know now. I'm the child of a deaf adult. My parents were deaf, and so they were low income. But we bought a house in Akron, Ohio. And I remember their sort of pride of having that house. It was a small 1,000-square-foot home. But that kind of always sort of stuck with this idea that home is important, community is important. It's sort of all those things about home ownership. I mean, how can you not love it? I mean, it's just such a cool market to be in.
Yeah. It's like we can't forget about the personal stories that are woven in it, right? We can't just look at it as a business only, because it's so tied to people and so tied to our our shared experience. And going back a little bit to how maybe you're bridging the gap between the experience you've had at a GSE versus working now on kind of startup entrepreneurial sort of focused things. I mean, weren't there some changes made at the GC level around how rental history can be considered? Is there any bridge between, you know, the built, points, system and now some new options to utilize rental history?
Yeah, for sure. So we will be having an announcement soon. I don't want to spoil what's coming out, but we're definitely going to go right at that. By way of background, I mean, it's amazing that for so long people were paying rent and just never getting any benefit, never getting like even credit for it, right? Because number one, it's not reported to the bureaus. It's really complicated to get the data right to the bureaus so that they can use it in modeling. And so, but now it's become a big area of focus because, the focus on racial equality and all of these other things that are going on have shown a light on the fact that you've got an unbanked population who maybe responsibly been avoiding getting into debt or into credit, who are making rental payments on time, and they're completely locked out from becoming a homeowner and actually being able to build wealth. And so, I think it's a really interesting way to approach it. It's been slow going. There are companies out there that are charging landlords to report rent, and they'll do it for them, but it comes at a cost. So it's going to take a while for the data to get to the bureaus, and then the bureaus to be able to start incorporating in the score. So what we're hoping at Bilt, and what you'll hear from us very soon, we're hoping is going to really, really accelerate that process and just make it far more common. I think Vantage Score put out a report that said, adding rental data, good rental history can add 40 points to your credit score. I mean, that's huge, right? I mean, it's like you look at a rate sheet or like that makes a big difference in your cost, your ability to qualify. So yeah, that's a big exciting thing. And Fannie Mae has really led the charge on that. They were sort of the first to announce like, we will use this in our underwriting process. And I think Freddie's been very active in this space as well. So that a lot more to come, I think, and not just rent, but all sorts of other things like that.
Yeah. So as we look, kind of towards the future, to kind of close us out here, as somebody as knowledgeable as you are about home ownership access, the barriers that are there, if you had a magic wand and you could wave it, what's the one thing that you would do or change that you think would most increase first-time home buyers, young home buyers access to home ownership? So let's end on a really positive, hopeful note.
Well, I do have a magic wand. We have it. We keep it at the Bilt offices.
That's right. That's right.
So no, I think the answer to your question is something that I have thought a lot about. When we started talking about housing supply, the one thing I realized, like I look at a city like Dayton, Ohio, which is, close to where an old GM factory was. Like, I think something like only half the homes in Dayton, Ohio are occupied right now. Wow. And I just started thinking like, we're really space constrained in these really expensive areas like DC, right? Like everyone's trying to jam themselves into DC and there's few homes and prices keep going up. And I'm like, why do you want to live? It's swampy and there's mosquitoes here and you can work from anywhere now, right? And so kind of a long-winded way of answering your question, Jeff, I really hope that remote working becomes a more widely acceptable way of working, because I do think, and just a bit of home ownership history, the only time homeownership has really gone up in this country, and there's a great piece that Don Layton wrote at the Harvard Joint Center, looking at when the car was invented, right? So like everyone was trying to live in the cities, there wasn't enough space, so most people were just renters. And then the car's invented, and suddenly you can spread out, and then the suburbs are created, and home ownership went from, I forget, 35 to 65%, right? My hope is that this, with the pandemic, the silver lining of it will be like, wow, we actually can all remote work. Like, you guys look like you're sitting in a studio together. It feels great. Like, I'm used to Zoom. I feel like we're, having like a real in-person conversation. I'm not missing that much. But if we could spread out as a country and do it thoughtfully in a way that we're refocusing on things like residential segregation and fixing problems of redlining, like, let's just spread out a little bit. I'm not saying like rural, like I'm saying like cities could be 300,000 people and they're great. You're starting to see that happen, but I would really accelerate that because I think it has a lot of social benefits that we can take advantage of.
Oh, well, as always, wise words from the stage that is Jonathan Lawless. Super appreciate you and what you're doing to rally people around these concepts. I know you're doing a lot to spark inspiration in multiple areas. So keep up the good work, and thanks so much for spending the time with us.
Hey, it's my pleasure. It's great to talk to you. By the way, for your listeners, my email is lawless@biltrewards.com. Easy to remember. So if you got thoughts or ideas, please send them my way. And love to connect with folks. So, but yeah, thank you guys for the opportunity.